Thank you. Mr. Brooks, we'll start with your report. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Big meeting with our students of the month. Look forward to this every month. We also have a nice presentation for the Board of Education and the community, anybody that can stick around, on our Vision 2020 proposals. Also, just a couple of pieces of information for future thought for the board. Within the next couple of meetings, typically we've done it in April, we're going to want to start looking at what our summer meeting schedule looks like. If you recall, the reorganization meeting has to take place within the first 2 weeks of July. If we stick with the Thursday approach, July 4th and July 11th would be those 2 Thursdays, so we can kind of make some decisions about which of, now it doesn't have to be on a Thursday, but if we stick with the Thursday model, that would be those 2 options. And then we've typically, for business purposes, looked at one public board meeting for the month of August. And the last couple of summers, we've had an additional meeting for a board working on some relationship building and retreat matters for the Board of Education. So just start getting your heads around that thought process so that in April we can start to consider it and set that in stone so people can set up their summer schedules too. Just also a reminder, our next meeting, April 4th, will begin here at 6 o'clock with an executive session, and then we'll have the regular meeting again at 7:30. In addition to April 4th, kicking back into developing the 1920 school budget, we also have a presentation from the Let's jump up to the elementary school.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Mrs. Kaplan and I and Marlborough Elementary School, we're very excited to introduce our Student of the Month. I want to tell you, in addition to the wonderful things that his music teacher, Mr. Sharon, is going to tell you about, that, his music teacher is telling us these wonderful things, but I don't know if you're going to mention the concert 2 weeks ago, are you? I don't want to steal any of your thunder. So I had the pleasure of seeing Noah 2 weeks ago at the Ulster County Music Festival, and he was just so talented in the band, and I was thrilled to do that. So he's a very multi-talented musician, and Mr. Sharon will extol his virtues for you. Noah Ernst.
Thank you. First off, I would like to congratulate Noah. First, let me say, Mr. Boyd wishes he could be here tonight. However, he's playing for the High School Musical, Mary Poppins. These are the thoughts that he wanted to send out to you as well as I did. We are very proud to honor and able to present Noah Ernst as MES Student of the Month. Noah is a very talented musician. He is accomplished as a pianist, dancer, tuba player, and even vocalist. Noah performed at the All-County Band Festival 2 weekends ago, and he's also, this weekend, he's going to be performing at the All-County Chorus Festival. He's only one of 3 students to go to school to perform at the band, All-County Band Festival, and is one of 8 students to perform at the All-County Chorus Festival. To be selected for this highly competitive band and chorus is an honor and quite an accomplishment. Noah is one of the best tuba players and vocalists from this county. Noah is a kind, helpful, polite, smart, and very talented. He works very hard and shows in his accomplishments. He is a leader in 5th grade and is an encouragement for his peers. We always see Noah with a smile on his face and surrounded by friends. We will always watch with great pride as he excels through his school years. We know that this is just the beginning of his successes, and we wish him the very best. Congratulations, Noah.
Yes, by default, the middle school's next.
Thank you. March is Music in Our Schools Month, so the Marlboro Middle School is also very excited to acknowledge a student with many talents in the field of music and looking a little less green today than he might have been on the weekend. Our student of the month is Zach Moran, and our music teachers send their congratulations to you, and they did it in a very special way. Unfortunately, Mrs. Corbett wasn't feeling well and isn't here, and Ms. Fu, like Mr. Boyd, is also up at the high school performing with the Mary Poppins show, which I hope everyone gets to go see this weekend. So Mr. Bacazzi is going to help me cue the video.
See if we can make that a little louder.
Greeting the school with his positive attitude and important daily information. In class, Zach always works hard to contribute to the musical ensemble. He is a leader among his band and chorus classmates. Zach is a talented young man who sings, plays the piano, and the French horn. Miss Fu and I always see him giving 110% to doing his best. Zach also takes piano lessons outside of school. Additionally, Zach is a member of the Select Chorus, Jazz Band, Drama Club, FCCLA, and the track team. Zach is an honors student who is also taking honors math and science. He represents the community well and is an exemplary example of a hard-working student. We are so proud of him, and we want to congratulate him for being the Student of the Month.
And just to be clear, he was green because of Shrek, not because he wasn't feeling well.
Yep. Congratulations. Great job this weekend.
You know, families, each time that we do Student of the Month, I like to reflect on what we just heard. And if you understand truly what it is to be a Duke, you start to see some amazing characteristics, focused students, students that have teachers that think they're truly amazing people. Bryn, I love that everyone would love to have a Bryn in their class. That's pretty cool. Noah, multi-talented musician, vocalist, instrumentalist. You're a leader. Thank you. Zachary, role model. How many students have a video on YouTube sung by teachers? A hard worker, you're a TV studio announcer. Noah, Bryn, Zachary, thank you for being such great people. Thanks for being great Dukes. Families, thanks for sending us such great kids every day. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the student representative, Matt.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I know we kind of took our show on the road the past month and a half, but it's good to be back home in the normal meeting room. A couple announcements to start. I know it's been mentioned at least 3 or 4 times, but the MHS Drama Club musical opens up tonight. They're doing Mary Poppins. The first one was tonight, but other show times are tomorrow night at 7, Saturday night at 2 and 7, and Sunday at 2. I know the Drama Club has been working very hard on this production. I see them staying like after school till like 10 o'clock at night getting this ready. So I encourage everyone to reward their hard work and come out and see the show. I know they'll greatly appreciate it. Another thing going on next week that is a great event at Marlboro Middle School. They'll be hosting their annual Diversity Night next week on Wednesday, March 27th in the cafeteria, middle school cafeteria from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. The event promotes the sharing of information, artifacts, and food representing different cultural backgrounds from around the world in hopes of like educating students on the diverse world in which we live. The night will feature a performance by the jazz band and other great activities. It's really just a great night. You learn a lot about your peers and stuff, their diversity and backgrounds they come from, and really shows how we truly are a melting pot in this community. The last thing I wanted to touch on was at a couple board meetings ago, there was an internal request to the Board of Education to change the internet, student use of the internet from an opt-in policy to an from an opt-in policy to an opt-out policy. And I believe this is an excellent move because for a multitude of reasons. I was talking with many students, like, you know, kind of subtly saying like, hey, you know, you fill out this internet form, and like a lot of people are like questioning it, like, what form? I didn't know we had to fill out a form to use the internet. The internet's free. But if you actually look into it, there's a drastic amount of students who have not filled out the form and are technically unauthorized to use the internet at our schools. And that sets us at a disadvantage because we're really promoting the internet with our Chromebook one-on-one in 6th through 12th grade. And if we have like 50% technically unauthorized to use the internet, it's really ineffective. Just to give you kind of a tangible real-world example, if you look at registered organ donors in certain countries, there's a 2015 study done that in Germany, 12% of the population are registered organ donors, while Austria, it's about 90%. So are Austrians just naturally more generous than Germans? No, that's because in Austria, you opt out of being an organ donor when you fill out the form, while in Germany, it's an opt-in. So basically, you should set the default as what you're trying to promote. And I know in this district, we're big in promoting the use of the internet. It's a great tool to use in our classroom. So that's why I strongly believe the push for this policy to change it from an opt-in to an opt-out. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Matt. So the next announcement, Averly, is very adept to what you just did. So we'll let Mr. Brooks go. And now I understand why everything happens the way it does.
Thank you for the endorsement of that. The final revision is going to be going to the Board Policy Committee soon, so thank you. Actually, the reason for this quick pause, it's not a formal announcement. There'll be something a little more formal and a little more theatrical at the high school, but Mr. Jackson, Matt Jackson over here had some very exciting news presented to him this week, and you're looking at our class valedictorian in Matt Jackson. So congratulations, Matt. I know it was a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of sweat and tears on that, so congratulations.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to Vision 2020.
Great. Can we get that queued up?
Now here we just use really page up, page down, or the mouse, either way. Yep, that works.
We'll just give him 1 minute, okay? It's just,
Absolutely.
some people do have class in the morning.
I was going to say it was something I said, but I hadn't said anything yet.
The way you moseyed on up. Yeah, it's cozy.
So just a quick walk through the history of this. For the past several months, and actually quite honestly for the past few years, we've been reviewing our building conditions survey. That was a report put together by a group of engineers required by the state, and have come to the point where there are some items that we no longer can deal with in-house. They're larger items, and Mr. Cavazza's crew has been doing a fantastic job of handling some of the smaller items. So this year we contracted with CS Arch Architectural Firm to review that BCS, the Building Conditions Survey, and spend some time in our schools to really get to know our schools, and landed on a series of larger items that need to get addressed. So we're presenting those elements to the Board of Education for the past couple of months with a series of tours through each of the 3 schools, and we're landing back here today with a final presentation and proposition for the Board of Education to consider tonight as a complete package. So we've got a quick little overview of the whole project that we've been working towards, and then open it up at the board's pleasure for questions and dialogue, and we'll go from there. So with that, I'll give it to Mr. Ritzenthaler.
Okay, as Michael had indicated, this is going to be a more brief presentation of what has been presented the last few weeks at the various schools, kind of a recap or a review. Just to remind everybody, one of the first things we did was look across all of the buildings in the district and considered some of the district-wide facility issues that needed to be addressed. Of course, first and foremost was safe buildings, safe building access, security issues, and considerations. Next was student and family support services and improvements to how those are being delivered within the buildings, mostly obviously focused at the middle and the high school levels, physical education, food service, toileting, and things like system obsolescence, systems that have run their course and are now at a point in time when they're not reliable and need to be either changed out or improved in some kind of comprehensive manner. A lot of those items are what came right out of the building conditions survey. So starting at the elementary, we're going to go youngest to oldest this time. We're switching up the order. Some of the key issues we wanted to focus on at the elementary were, again, the secured entry, and you'll see that at each of the 3 buildings. Some sound attenuation in between one of the music rooms to a classroom. Some recess play amenities. The replacement of some deteriorating soffit material around one of the original structures. This is on the exterior of the building. That's causing some issues over time with, and Larry now is to a point where Larry really can't maintain it properly. And then, of course, there are some minor BCS and egress enhancements through the building that were promoted and suggested. Just a highlight of a couple of things. We talked about the secured vestibules, and of course the existing condition is shown with the greeter desk in the lobby on the right, or on the left, and on the right you can see the new proposed secured vestibule with the greeter now located within the office itself. So moving on to the middle school, again, I said this was going to just be brief with some highlights. Again, some of the key issues, and you'll see there's recurring themes. Secured entry, of course. Here we're also looking at the vehicular and pedestrian movements on the site around the middle school, family and support services like guidance, the psychologist, etc. The gymnasium and locker rooms, music rooms, dining hall, nursing facilities, toileting, makerspace, the innovation lab, bringing that up from the basement area to the main level of the building, and then again, items identified in the building condition survey. So a few of the highlights here, again, in this building, we presented the proposal to actually move the location of the main entrance to the building so that we could provide that secured entrance into the building from the public through the greeter being in a secure location, expanding that office area out to provide the proper space for those activities, and work our way around the building with respect to what gets infilled into where the main office is currently and so forth. So this would be the new secured entry and greeter station. A graphic we haven't shown before. This is the proposal for the new band chorus room. So we would be removing the old metal structure that's inside the courtyard right now and building on a new band chorus room to better serve that program. Hopefully everybody remembers that space from the tour. The innovation lab, again, bringing the innovation lab up to the main floor of the building and serving that program to a much nicer degree than can happen downstairs. And then moving on finally to the high school, again, the secured entry, as with all the buildings, the student support services, the nursing suite, upgrades to the dining hall, athletics, art, athletic site improvements, the performing arts and music enhancements, as well as items identified in the building conditions survey. And again, here's an image of the new secured vestibule that's proposed with a lot more enhancements for creating that secured vestibule with direct entry into the main office. Again, a lot of glass for some visibility from the main office into the lobby. And again, the new student support and family services suite, certainly much more appropriate space for both the counselors as well as the students to research their careers and interact. the expanded fitness center, moving from a true weight room to a fitness center, which will have all of the equipment for cardio, muscle groups, as well as the free weights in an expanded environment. So going through from the last board meeting, it was discussed, a series of projects reductions were discussed, and so we wanted to provide a summary to the board of what those were. At the middle school, of course, you can see the lower parking lot, the original project proposal, and then the scope, which was either reduced or removed, and you can see an accounting on that as far as the middle school, the lower parking lot, that was completely removed from consideration, or at least can be discussed by the board. The gymnasium auditorium improvements, what was removed was the installation or the reinstallation of windows that used to serve and access into that gymnasium space. So that represents the reduction of the 236.91. Building improvements from the BCS. The reduction here is related to the new band room. So with a new band room, we didn't need some of the building condition survey improvements to the old band room, so those were removed accordingly. At the high school, you can see the removal of the locker room renovation scope, the broadcasting studio, some reduction to components of the cafeteria renovations that were suggested. So a reduction of a little over $366,000. Reduction to some of the recommended site improvements, and that also includes the outdoor dining improvements, and a reduction of some of the fencing that was proposed. Reduction of the building-wide toilet room renovations in the high school, and then also a reduction of some of the improvements to the recess areas at the elementary building. All totaled, the current proposed reductions represent a little over $5.1 million off of, and I'll go to the next slide, you'll be able to see, off of a total that began at $24.6 million. So $24.6 million of identified proposal or scope, with the reductions of $5.1 million, that would leave us with a proposed capital project of $19.499 thousand, or $19,499,000. Is there any questions to this point? Patrick, you want to cover these slides?
So this is the, excuse me, the breakout of what we would expect the financing picture to look like, which would be on a $19.5 million project. Our intention is to use $3 million worth of existing funds, $1.5 million from the capital reserve that we put together a few years ago, and then we have another $1.5 million that we would appropriate out of it sits in debt service right now to lower the overall borrowing cost to about $16.5 million. We expect the state will pick up 85% of the cost at a 70.1% building aid ratio. It's our ratio for 1920, starting in the 1920 school year. So that would really reduce the total local share to about $7.9 million, which would result in an average cost for the entire project, net of the building aid that would be associated with the borrowing, of about $461,000 a year. Overall, the net debt payment would be about $1.5 million, with receiving about $1 million in aid, lowering it to, I'd say, $500,000, but the $461,741. So we do anticipate to see a reduction overall in expense in excess of $800,000 through doing this work. A big piece of that is the $1.2 million piece of debt that we'll have dropping off, which was related to a tax cert proceeding for Central Hudson. There's no building aid associated with that $1.2 million payment. We also have a $500,000 payment that's dropping off that does have building aid. So we lose the $500,000. We also lose about $350,000 in building aid revenue associated with that. So that nets us about $150,000. And then we add the $1.2 million, which has no building aid associated, gives us about a $1.35 million reduction. And then if we add in the $500,000 for new financing costs, the net effect is about $850,000 reduction in overall expense. And the key piece of that is replacing unaided debt with debt that would generate building aid. So it's a significant opportunity. We would not see this type of situation if we were replacing aided debt with aided debt. But the fact that it's non-aided and a significant building aid ratio puts us in a unique perspective of being able to finance this additional work with really a much muted impact on the net effect to the district finances. Is it just arrow? So that being said, we ran several scenarios looking at what our expected accumulated fund balance would look like if we did not do a project versus what it would look like if we do the project. So you can see really there's additional benefit to doing the project in terms of district finances. Because of the mechanisms of the tax cap calculation and the way the capital levy is treated within that calculation, it does provide for an opportunity for some additional growth of the tax cap, which ultimately would result in additional revenue available to the district, which would reduce the amount of fund balance and reserves that we need to apply, which would ultimately just slightly enhance our financial picture compared to not doing the project at all. So with that being said, we'll turn it back to Tom to finish, and then I imagine we'll have questions at some point. Thanks.
Did you want to talk about the resolution?
So just on this slide is what the actual resolution would look like. This is the resolution that is on the board's agenda for tonight. There's two elements that you have to act on. The SECRA, which is the first action, and the second action is approving this as the resolution, which has all of the legal terminology and values that are associated with the project. And then just to give a perspective on the final timeline here, tell me to speak to that.
So should the board go through and put up a vote in May with the budget, the timeline moving forward after an approval of the public, we have about 6 to 7 months worth of the design time or technical development of the project so that we can submit plans to the education department for review and approval. We would look at doing an outsourced review to be able to affect some of the work starting in 2020. We would expect that this would go over 2 different summers, given the volume of the work to be completed, and given that much of this has to be phased in because it's pretty intensive renovation of the interiors of the buildings. But we would look to start this process and bid some of the work out beginning in March of 2020 and run the construction from early spring or May of 2020 through October of 2021, by the time we'd have all the projects closed out. And we would look at probably bidding this in 2 different phases of affecting the work, so that we would avoid the contractors having to try to predict a second summer's worth of work and trying to calculate what that would be from a financial standpoint. It'll probably be more effective to actually bid this in 2 different distinct phases. At least that's the initial thoughts. Certainly that can change as we get into the more specifics of the design and we start to map out the phasing. And I think that was it. Any questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I have a bunch of questions, but we'll share. I'll make sure I give you all the opportunity in between. But let's start with the fund balance. I don't understand how we're going to use $3 million of fund balance, and this table doesn't show any reduction on either column or on the Vision 2020 column. So can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. The fund balance that we're illustrating is the general fund balance. We also have a capital fund, we have a debt service fund, we have a school lunch fund. There's several other funds within the district. So the money that's going to be appropriated, or the money that's proposed to be appropriated, is the $1.5 million, which comes from the capital reserve, right, which is in the capital fund. So that will have no impact on what the fund balance in the general fund is. The other money that we have sits in the debt service fund. So we would appropriate that money through the budget process, which would essentially allow us to move the money from the debt service fund to the general fund to pay debt service, and then take the money that we would have budgeted for debt service and apply that as an appropriation towards the project. So essentially you have $1.5 million come from the capital fund, $1.5 million come from the debt service fund, none of which affects the total fund balance in the general fund, the A fund.
You made a comment about the fact that with the calculation of the tax cap, it goes up a little bit based on the way they do calculations with capital planning, and that also contributes to the fact that the column with 2020, Vision 2020, remains pretty much the same. Can you flip that up, the one I'm talking about, please? The fund balance one. So
you may have to
and you made some mention of additional revenue. So what that sounds like to me is the tax cap goes up and that revenue comes from tax levies, if that's what I understand.
There's a very slight difference as you get further out in the years. And just as a caveat, there's, do we know what that is? Oh, it's the light? Oh, I thought somebody was buzzing at the door. So, you know, there are a large number of variables that are held constant when doing these calculations. So as you can see, you know, when you get further out, you start to see that benefit start to accrue after year 2024 to 2025. And I mean, you're really talking about a few $1,000s here or there. So the way, it's just a mechanism of the tax cap calculation. We went and we kind of looked at the long-term, you know, anticipated impact, holding all variables constant to see how that would impact the expected tax rates and that impact. And it's almost negligible, the impact that would be felt by the taxpayer. And again, strictly because of the fact that we're replacing the unaided debt with aided debt. So, you know, we're not talking about an astronomical amount of money. You know, when you get in the 25-26 school year, you're looking at, you know, a difference of about $34,000 on a, you know, what's going to be at that point probably a $40 million levy.
But there's no plans to replace the $3 million between the other two funds, right? Like the building fund and the
as we go
Well, it's actually a very good question. If you look at the balances here, the board in those future years at any time could decide to take any of those funds and push it out to those capital, any of those reserves.
So we still currently run a planned deficit, and that continues for the next several years until these other pieces of debt will retire and start to switch out potentially, whether it switches out or it doesn't, or we don't replace it. So about 3 years into the future is when we expect to go from running a planned deficit to be able to go back to running a surplus. So as that surplus grows, obviously the board would have discretion to say at what point do we feel our reserves are adequate, where we could make a choice to put funds back into a capital reserve or use funds to potentially impact the tax levy.
Can you explain this deficit again? Is this referring to the ramp down of the value of the plants and the percentage of taxes that's shifted between?
Yeah,
are we still talking about that, or is that ending soon as well?
It's essentially the same impact we've had for a number of years. Planned expenses in excess of what our revenues are. And the plan is to use district funds, our savings account, to finance those costs until we reach the point where the costs were reduced, which is when the debt would be falling off. So it's really at that point where the debt starts to fall off that we see the mix go from running a planned deficit to being in a position where we'll be expecting an operational surplus.
And we're still baking that amount of money, that deficit, or however you want to call it, in our budgets, right? So it goes in after tax collection and then back out.
Correct. So, right now, again, just rough numbers, going into next year's budget, we're planning to use about $4 million worth of reserves and fund balance as an appropriation with an expected expenditure of about $1.7 million. So that other $2.3 million will go in there. We don't spend it. At the end of the year, it's left over. It bounces back into total fund balance. And then the following year we would appropriate. So what happens though is about 3 years out, we get to the point where we're no longer expecting it. We'll put $4 million in, or we'll put $2.5 million in, and we'll expect $2.5 million to come back out. We won't be in a position where we'll be anticipating or planning to spend that money, any portion of that money.
Yeah, but you're showing after this year, dropping down to 3.6, then to 2.2, then 1.9, using less and less assigned fund balance each year, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so we're at that point where we're not having to save extra money to cover bills. We finally will have leveled off.
Right, and we'll start,
operating.
we'll hit the bottom and we'll start swinging back up. So we'll start accruing more money.
We'll hit the bottom and then we can level off and not have to raise taxes, it would be at that point.
Yes, there's a potential for that.
The $800,000 on the slide, on the estimated debt service, that's, just help me clear that up, that's the benefit of paying off our debt service, our current debt service, right?
So currently, we have two pieces of debt that'll fall off. We have a $500,000 debt payment that has building aid associated with it, with about $350,000 worth of revenue associated with that $500,000.
Okay.
So when that piece falls off, we have a net saving about $150,000. The following year, we have the $1.2 million debt falling off. There's no revenue associated with that because there's no building aid for that. So the $150,000 plus the $1.2 million is a $1.35 million reduction in expense. If we go with the project, we would have approximately a $1.5 million debt service payment that would generate $1 million worth of revenue through building aid payments. Again, these are just general rough numbers. So the net effect of that $1.5 million in new debt is an increased expense of $500,000. So we have a reduction of $1.35 million and an increase of $500,000, netting the two out to about $850,000 in reduced overall expenditure associated with all debt.
And if we don't do the project, is that number change? How's that number change?
Well, if we don't do the project, we would not have the $1.5 million debt payment, but we also do not have the $1 million in revenue. So essentially, it would be a net impact of the reduction would be the full $1.35 million instead of the $850,000.
Okay, thank you.
Patrick, could you repeat what you just said one more time? Not the whole thing, the last statement.
Sure. So if we essentially are going to have a net debt of 1.35 million retiring.
Mm-hmm.
If we do nothing, we have a net savings of $1.35 million. If we do the project, we incur a $1.5 million debt payment that generates $1 million worth of building aid for a net new cost of $500,000. So if we do the project, we save 1.35 million, but it costs us 500,000. So once it's netted out, is a net $850,000 reduction in overall debt.
Just so we make sure we're talking about the same number, it's 461, 741 on our projection. Now, Pat's referring to it as rounding at 5,000, but that's the number, 461, 741 is the net new payment.
Correct. It's much easier for me to say 1.5 million and a million than 461,000 and 1 million.
461,000.
39,000, right.
So ultimately, if we do nothing, we're going to save 462,000 a year starting in the 21-22 school year, because that's when both of them will have fallen off.
I'd have to look at how the way the debt payment's structured, but yeah.
I'm looking at, based on your chart, the last payment is in the 2021.
Correct, but
the 1.2.
it all depends on the way we have the new finance costs roll in. I think it's another year or two before the full 1.5 million would be felt. It starts out with bands.
Yeah, right. When we would actually start, we would still see additional savings because you're not going to finance everything in the first year.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're not going to have done all the work in the first year.
Correct.
And whether we use the cash up front so you don't finance anything, or that'll all be depending on interest rates and where everything's at the given time. But the most you could save, the most you'd be turning back to the taxpayers would be $462,000.
Correct.
Difference.
Correct.
By doing this project. If we didn't do it.
If we didn't do it, correct.
If you didn't.
Right.
Right.
Opposed to 850.
Well, no, it would go, the 850 stays.
The 850 is the savings
to
associated with this 461,000.
Up to 1.2 million.
It's 1
to-
point,
to your
yeah,
point.
1.35.
1.35 is what we
They're
would
going
say.
to get the full savings, or they're only going to get the partial minus the 462.
Correct. Either way, the net impact is a reduction in the net debt payment and an actual savings in expenditures that, when you look at the numbers that I've given to you, there's growth in each of those years. So you see that the budget growth is a small percentage because the growth is not actual growth that's felt because it's being covered by the savings in the year.
Right, and I
Right.
think one of the things, when we look at that, the overall debt we have on all of our buildings, we as a district historically, and this predates all of us, from the large projects that had to be done because of 30 years of doing nothing. The boards before us spent a lot of time getting the buildings into the conditions they are today, but unfortunately, to do that, we had to incur a lot of debt. So we're now heading in the direction of, in the opposite direction, where if every 10 years or so, we do a capital project spread over the buildings to maintain them, you will see that we'll have additional debt falling off. We got 2.2 that comes off after the 27, 28.
Yep.
Some of that's aidable. Plus, our aid ratio at that time was very different than it is now. And correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, if we do nothing and we look to the future, if something positive happens with Dan Scammer and our value goes up down the road, that'll affect our ratio that we get in building aid, correct?
It
Right.
could, because, the caveat there to look at would be, do we anticipate there to be a pilot payment for that? Because if there's a pilot payment, when they do the overall valuation of the district, that property gets zeroed out in terms of the overall wealth of the district. So when the town of Newburgh sends us the numbers, they will take whatever they have on the books for Dan Scammer, they zero that out because Dan Scammer isn't paying taxes. They're making a payment in lieu of taxes. That's a negotiated structured
But
payment.
today, we are guaranteed that it's a pilot
Correct.
when we'd be going to state ed to lock in our rate. Now we know what it is. A year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, if we weren't to do anything and then we were to try and do something, we wouldn't know what our 8 rate was going to be.
Our aid could fluctuate in the future based on the change in valuations of the town, and the fluctuation would be felt through existing projects for this aid. So if we approve this project, we are not necessarily locking this number in forever. It would still be subject to some variability depending on where our overall district wealth goes.
Right, but
That's
your building aid rate, when they approve the project, is where we bond it against.
It can change. I did get clarification. I reached out to Questar State Aid Planning,
Okay.
and because of the time period associated with the building aid ratio being applied now, it is a possibility that the ratio could change in the future. So it will not. When they look at this based on the classification of where this is, it's like BLD3, BLD4. They have different aid ratios. Our lowest ratio in that is 0.009, which comes back, I think, from like 1999 when we still had the 1.9 billion in district valuation. When the power plants went bankrupt, we lost $600 million in value. So in that 1 year, we lost a third of the value of the district, which is when
It took 3 or 4.
it took 3 years,
3 years
for that number to be reflected into the aid numbers. That's when we got the 4 million, and then the 3.2 million in prior year adjustment accelerated.
So, Pat, I want to explore this, what you're saying in specific scenarios, because in my opinion, there's no question that you have to do something here. You have an opportunity of debt coming off. We have building condition survey items that have been hanging out for years. We have other items that need to be done. So to me, there's no question we have to do something. I'm questioning the 20 million or 16 million or 12 million, whatever's the right number, and our lack of time to really analyze it in what I think the appropriate due diligence. But none of that, that's just a backdrop to what I want to ask you. So I see 2 or 3 scenarios in this. One is the scenario you've been saying, which is the debt comes off in 20 to 21. It's going to be $1.3 million. Using the $20 million loan, we get $850,000 savings, a $450,000 payment with the aid, and we get the full thing, right? That whole scenario I think is pretty clear. We're using the examples of what if we do nothing, I think, to build the boundaries of what do we do nothing, what do we do at 20, and what might be in between, okay? Now, let's do another scenario. Let's say we don't do this today. Let's say we skip doing the vote today, and we want to do more work and analysis on understanding what's really the most important things to do, what's the nice to haves, and let's come up with some middle ground. So if we put this process out 6 months, I know it affects the schedule, but how does it affect the building aid calculation? It sounded like in the other meetings that if we didn't do it on the exact time, the exact year that the debt came off, that we would not get this opportunity down the road. I don't think that's true. I think you still get building aid down the road, whether we kept that money in the bank, 1.4 million, and waited a year and then did it then, we'd still get the same, we'd still be having the same conversation about building aid and 70% ratio, et cetera.
What the timing of this does is creates a seamless experience, if you will, for the taxpayer, so that the unaided debt drops off, replaced with aided debt, and the taxpayer doesn't feel that impact. If we delay to where the debt falls off, our levy, everything reduces, everybody's tax bills would reflect whatever that reduction is, and now when you go to replace with building a debt, you're gonna, instead of seeing this, you're gonna see this.
Okay, but couldn't you do something in the middle of that, like some compromise of that, like we've been doing for years on the soft landing by collecting revenue from the
Well, I wouldn't be able to budget for debt that doesn't exist, and until those debts drop off, we're planning to run operational deficits anyway. So we're already putting a significant amount of money into the financing of the year's operations for the district.
So the only impact besides schedule and besides some of the variables that go in with building aids, as you discussed, that could change year to year down the road, which is a given anyway, is the fact that the emotional effect of the taxpayers seeing their taxes go down and then up some percent when we do it.
No, that's not the only.
It will not. It won't only go down. It'll come back up to the level it was and go beyond that to get to where it needs to be.
Valid point on the scheduling piece, because any delay after this May is automatically pushing the entire project start date out to 2021.
So costs will
Tom
increase.
gave us an idea about cost escalation roughly figure out how much annually is the cost escalation, Tom? I know it's a, a tough one to figure, but you do have a guide as far as.
It is, and these last couple of years, we've seen significant, I mean, you're all well aware of what's happening in the marketplace. There's a lot of work, and we're seeing, 10 and 15 and even 20% changes in the market fluctuations over the past couple of years. We would conservatively, even minimal, you'd have to figure it's going to be between 5 and 10% when you look at an escalation factor based on at least the current market. Even 5% is, what, $1 million a year?
I mean, I'm talking months. I'm
Yeah,
not
but
talking years.
John, you're not talking months.
Right.
Because you can only do construction in the schools during certain time periods.
Right.
Because you're going to be renovating those regular spaces, so you can't do them in the middle of the school year. So if you don't hit if you don't do it at a certain pace, you don't hit you miss next summer's construction cycle, then you can't start till the following summer. So you use a full year. And even if you wanted to try and push it a couple months, then you'd be talking, we may be able to hit next summer, but then you'd be talking a special election.
Could you go, Tom, could you go to the timeline page? Because thank you, John, for bringing this up too, because this kind of really points it out. If we were to, let's say we were to vote in the fall, there's still 6 or 7 months worth of design process, which puts you into the summer of when you might get that approval back. And then bidding in the summer, you won't be able to actually start the work on the interior work until the following summer. There might be some exterior, go ahead, Tom, you're the.
Well, we would never bid this project in the summer because everyone is flush with work and your prices are going to go through the roof.
That's the delays,
you would
because
wait.
90%, well,
you would wait till November to start.
80% of the work is inside of our schools, and we can't do that work while the children are there. So that has to happen during July and August.
I just had a question.
I'll speak a little bit while you're thinking, if you don't mind, John.
Pat, I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
Sure.
At what point, is it in the January and February where where it's outsourced for approval? Is that when the rate would lock in? Is that when we would have real numbers of exactly if it is 70%, 72, 68?
Well, we know our building aid ratio is at 70.1% starting next year. What it will be beyond that, we don't know. There was a proposal that the governor had put forth that I don't think is going to result in anything. That would have resulted in us getting, I think we would have gone to a 66.7% rate with that under where everybody in the entire state would be harmed. And I don't know if you saw in the news, I know Saratoga Springs was very concerned because they would have suffered significantly because they're using a select ratio that would no longer be available to them, and their property values have increased
So the rate of 70.1%, is that subject to change every year?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's all relative to the wealth of our district relative to the wealth of all the other districts in the state, right? So when we lost that power plant, we lost a third of the value, our building aid throughout those several years, when we got caught up with the state aid, our building aid climbed significantly because of the loss in wealth of the district.
But you don't get it right away, because
Correct.
they're doing
There's a 3-year
calculations
lag.
now for 3 years ago.
Right, there's a 3-year, they're looking back at the
I
value.
don't know why it's a computer. They can't do it the same year for some reason in the state. Susan?
So quite honestly, last meeting, I listened to what you all proposed for the very first time. So much of it made sense. I've been going up and down, back and forth with all of this. And there's so much, first, for the record, I want to say this. Number one, I believe that we have to invest in our facilities. We have to maintain them. And as I've said, I feel very strongly that the middle school is in need of a tremendous amount of work. I do feel that we started out with the thought process that, you know, we're going to look at our old building condition survey, we're going to prioritize. I certainly see the highlights of the priorities, one, which I agree with, and then along the way, a lot of other things got added. And with all of that being said, to do whatever we can to make our facilities greater and better, I'm all for it. But my concern is, backing out of all of this, we have a taxpayer that, quite honestly, I don't know if our demographic of taxpayer is going to remain consistent. I honestly don't know. I don't know with everything that's going on around us, if it's going to positively impact us with perhaps an influx of migration of new people. What I am seeing is a lot of potential renters. I'm not seeing, unless someone can tell me otherwise, I'm not seeing a lot of new residential construction going on. I'm seeing a lot of college kids leaving college with a tremendous amount of debt, coming into communities with a tremendous amount of debt, basically with mortgages, and therefore they can't get mortgages because the cost of their college tuition is a mortgage. And because they've made the commitment into such high costs of college, they're now taking the time to pay that off. And so what I'm getting at is, who is our taxpayer? And what does that mean for the sustainability of what we have going forward? And what does that mean in regards to, instead of having people coming into the community, investing in the community, we're seeing perhaps more coming in, renting, being transient, and then leaving. And I'm not saying that with all those scenarios, taxes aren't paid, but I'm just trying to understand. Either we're going to have an influx of growth because of what's going on around us, because of the potential of Indian Point closing and what those projected closures mean to us, because we're going to be sandwiched and, you know, hopefully people will want to come and live here, and then we will have even a larger tax-paying base. Or we are going to look at the results of our demographic study that weren't as positive, and we're going to have to say, okay, do we have taxpayers that are on a fixed income? So what I'm getting at is, all of this I so want to do. I want to invest in our school. I want to make sure that our schools are attractive for those that are here, those that are paying, and those that could potentially come in. But yet it's this gamble, and I'm back and forth trying to fully pull myself back at the speed that we have taken this. And I can understand certain reasons why we are going at this speed because of the timelines that are being projected here. And I understand it. But at the same time, I just get very conflicted about the priorities of what we are including in all of this.
And I'll add one more thing. There are other factors that we haven't had time to look against, like the budget outlook for 5 years. Like, what are our program needs in the next few years that each $100,000 we could save by doing maybe $14 million or $12 million of this bond could go towards another teaching resource or something, right? We have this, if you want to equate the opportunity, we have a $1.4 million debt coming off. To get that kind of money freed up, you have to lay off 14 teachers, right? And the services and programs that go with it. Now, I'm just identifying the comparative opportunity. So I'm just uncomfortable that we're doing this so fast. We have to do something. We should do something. It's a minimum, I think, $8 to $10 million that I did doing the math off the spreadsheets for business condition survey, for the what they called site improvements, which are often tied to some of the security and vestibule upgrades that we said we wanted, right? So the numbers to me is around 10, let's say, right? 11 of must do. Everything else, you could go on for a while to compare back and forth, but we spent one meeting, and I went back and listened to the whole recording, minus the part that got cut off in the back, and it was a total of less than 2 hours of deliberation to come to a $20 million, $19.6 million decision. I got to tell you, it takes me longer to buy a refrigerator than that. I mean, that's just, and then here we are in the second meeting ready to vote. I just can't get my hands around that. And then the fact that we can't wait a couple of months and maybe spend 10 grand on a vote because, just because? I mean, another thing on the schedule, how confident are we that this 2-month outsourced review is going to happen so short? Those things tend to take longer, right? There's risk in everything we're doing here, right?
That's an expedited outsourced review, so that's not through the normal SED.
But are we confident we can get it done in the 2 months? Or is that just?
That's a guarantee?
Well, there are no guarantees with SED.
Yeah.
But based on our current experience, the reviews have been picked up within a week, 2 weeks at the most, and we've been getting through the reviews in under 2 months, actually. But there are no guarantees. There is no guarantees that, you know, the SED queue will not change. Right now, it's at 48 weeks, which is why you can't go into the normal queue.
I have two issues. The haste of that we're doing this to know really are we doing it the right way and the right number. And number two, which I think is one we've been overlooking, is the impact on when the taxpayers hear this. Some people are hearing this for the first time. They haven't been coming to the meetings. If they don't get the record, the Southern Dutchess Times, they don't even know this is happening until just recently, right? And to use the words that Mark quoted Mike, we're going to flood the community with information in the next 45 days. I'm afraid that we're going to scare them in a sense and get a no vote, and then we're going to be back in a worse situation because to try to recover from a failed vote is going to be more difficult than taking a few extra months to do this right, to get all the board on board, get all the board behind understanding all these other factors that we probably should have looked at if we had more time, and being able to say to the public when they look at me in the eye at a Cub Scout meeting or a Shrek play or wherever they bump into me, hey, what do you think about this? You really need to spend $20 million? Don't you? How much fluff is in that? How much is in there that we don't need? Because that's the questions I'm already getting, and I'm sure you all are too. That bothers me more. A no vote bothers me more because how are you going to recover for that in a time delay? Right? And you're going to spend the $10,000 anyway. So I'm conflicted equally to the point where I was coming here tonight with the idea to make a motion to table the vote. Because unless I like to hear some opposing arguments, and I like to hear the rest of the board on this since we've had some more time to look at the data that came in, throughout the week. I don't know about you all, but I have not spent a whole lot of time, but I did spend some time. And, I got a few things that I rounded up in my sheets, and, I can't really prioritize what would be more important than the other without the help of the principals who put the thing together in the first place. So I'm kind of at that point. I don't know where anybody else is, but I alluded to this last meeting, and the 2 weeks that passed didn't get me any closer.
Yeah, I kind of echo what John says. That's where I am, and really what Susan said. When you start to look at this on a grander scale, the demographics are really, really important to me, and really would help me feel more comfortable about the sustainability of this. And we've talked about in the past that the number of students that qualify for free lunch now is continued to go up. So that it's reasonable to assume that people are struggling more. It's also reasonable to assume that those people are at risk for leaving the community. And as that number continues to grow, we take on more risk. Also, like John said, the expediency in which we're trying to get this through is a $20 million project. We're a $56 million school district. 2 months is really, really not a lot of time. You can only digest so much of this in that short a period of time. And this has consequences. I mean, you know, we can say that we can do this without raising your taxes, but that's just not accurate. I mean, there's an opportunity to, you know, even if we don't lower taxes, there's an opportunity to do something else with that money that would be coming off, you know, that we haven't discussed. And honestly, as I think everyone here, I'm in agreement with 90% of what's on this list. I mean, some of the stuff that I saw on the tours were not just embarrassing, but probably unsafe. I just don't know what that number is. I really don't. And, you know, I just don't like the expediency with which we're going forward with this. But I think we are missing the point on some of the demographic concerns, and I also think I could certainly use more time to think about I don't think there's any question that we have to do something. I just don't know what that number is. That makes me feel comfortable.
James?
So, I said it at the last meeting, I'm actually going to go off of what Tony said, having toured all these schools, I was comfortable at the last meeting with the 19 million, and I'm still comfortable with it. The stuff I see here, you know, if we do, Russell had a point last meeting, if we do the office space at the high school, we should certainly have it at the middle school so there's an easy transition when they're going in and doing careers, that they have the same space, they're used to it, you know, we're transitioning these kids along. The middle school is by far the worst, we all know that. I can't see, I mean, I get it, the demographics change, but there's no guarantee no matter what we do here, there is no guarantee. The only thing we can guarantee is this school is going to continue to fall apart. We have a band room that, frankly, what's it going to last, 2 or 3 years before it hits the dirt? We have to do something. I know the 19 million is a big number, but we depend on these people to do the right thing for us. And at some point, we're going to have to put the trust that they're leading us down the right path. So I'm still, I mean, I know I differ with you guys, and that's perfectly okay, but I'm still comfortable with the 19.4.
Yeah,
I'm there as well. I looked through the numbers in great detail today, and I was looking. We got something from Patrick today. If we did nothing versus doing the 20 million, and he showed the proposed budget out to 25, 26, and the difference in the tax levy is nominal. It's for me personally, having the discussion, when you look at the tax levy overall over the next 6 years, it's a no-brainer to do the project, in my opinion. And the security needs, the program needs, the upkeep of the schools, this is our community, these are our students, this is what we're about. We have to provide.
I don't think that any of that whatsoever is even in debate.
No, I understand that.
And quite honestly, if I can just respond to James, to insinuate that because one of us, some of us, have concerns about the process and how it's unfolding, to say, you know, it's fallen apart, to insinuate that we haven't seen what is needed, you know, I don't think objections and healthy discussion means that those of us who are objecting and having healthy discussion means that we're not interested in improving anything. But at the same time, even though we're looking at the budget separately and the capital project separately, because I understand they're two different entities, ultimately they're being paid for by the same taxpayer. And we have to understand the demographics of our taxpayer. And that's all I'm saying. Who's coming to me with the data? I'm asking for the data.
Well, I don't think we don't track the demographics of the community.
But we have.
We look at our study over whether or not the population is going to grow. Even our
we have to know our customer base. I understand our customers are our students, but it's also the taxpayers that pay the bill. So what I'm saying is, in order to have a better understanding, whatever that means, in order to have a better understanding of where we are from what we've come from, we're at a huge difference. I get that. This is not something where I think any of us are saying, oh my God, this is like horrendous. How could you put that? We're not going there. What we're saying is it's been a quick period of time. For certain reasons I understand, and certain reasons I say, maybe it's worth holding off to look at some other things. If the majority of the board doesn't feel that way, the majority of the board doesn't feel that way, and the taxpayer can decide. I'm fine with that. I just want the board to understand what my concerns are and what that means. Because if you're not driving down the road, if you're not driving across to the river to see what's going on in Poughkeepsie and to see how possibly those things that are happening, those developments could affect us, to see how Rockland County and Westchester County, they've had people leaving and how that could potentially be affecting us. And is it good? Is it bad? I know all of this stuff is a risk, but I think that serves to perhaps analyze that data a little bit more to help us project what we're going to see one way or the other.
John?
Yeah, my point to all this. $20 million is a lot of money. I understand. Everyone makes valid points about that. But the way I see this is that all 7 of us are going to vote yes eventually, whether it's tonight or a few months from now, on a number. Nobody's debating. It's not like we're saying 20 million or nothing. Everyone here is going to vote on 15, 12, 16, 19, 20. And the difference between 19 and 15 or 19 and 12, because we lose some of that aidable debt, is so small. I just think time is going to be our enemy, and trying to get people out for a special vote, I just think time's going to be our enemy. I think it's going to hurt us in the long run. That's just my opinion on that.
I'll push back a little bit in that you're right. I think we've all stated that everyone thinks we need to do something. It's clear. I don't, whether it's 19, 15, 12. For me, the question has become what, right? I'm of the opinion, and thank you, Pat, for that data today. I get the financial piece. I'm good with that. But this is a unique opportunity for this district. So if it's 19, are we putting the 19 in the right spot? Should it be 15? Could it be 10? Those are the things that's the kind of diligence you're not able to do in a 2-month period.
Well, and I think two questions. Pat or Mike, what's our drop dead date for a board vote to make the May vote?
Well, there's kind of 2 dates to that. If we were to put the legal notice into the Southern Ulster Times.
Don't worry about that. What's our drop dead date where we would need to, because we can approve another paper and do all that.
Right.
What's our drop dead date to make the May vote?
It's really April 5th. I mean, that's Friday, April 5th, but that would mean that we would have to have virtually in the Times Herald Record already printing as we're voting.
No, so we would have to have a vote by April 4th, so that you could have
Right, and we would have to have the ad
to them.
at the Times Herald Record already,
Right.
and they're virtually printing it.
Right.
I don't know if I.
Well, or are we do an earlier meeting just for, I'm just trying to,
I mean,
just
it
trying to
would
understand.
Give us a little more cushion if the meeting was Wednesday.
The 3rd.
The 3rd, so that we could put the ad in the paper, because it has to be in the paper 45 days prior to the vote.
April 6th is the latest date that we can have the ad appear in the paper.
Right.
Okay. So I guess the question really comes down, because I don't know, and I've been an advocate for, and I believe I'm comfortable with where we at with the things that we cut. Looking at the long-term picture, and I think what John talked about with the, if you take 2 million out, when you start talking, depends on what 2 million it is, because obviously 85% of it's aidable, so it varies. So it depends on what you take and whether it's aidable or not aidable, which portions of the capital project changes it. But it's not going to have a big effect on that annual payment, the $400,000 and change payment. It's going to, that we looked at the other, Pat, what was the I mean, you're talking 30,000 on 100,000, correct? Or no, because
15,000.
What information would you like?
when you, for every 100,000, what's the difference in the cost to the district?
I thought it was 15.
Every 100,000 drop off a project?
I could be off on that.
And honestly, I'm not even sure that's the argument, though.
Okay.
Right?
Well,
it's
no,
it's
if
more.
that's-
I understand that if we do 15 versus 19, we're talking about kind of rounding errors here at this point. It's more about where are we putting the 19, right? It's more about taking this unique opportunity we have, and if the number's 19, it's 19, but making sure that we're putting it in a place that best utilizes the resources of the district. That's all.
Okay, well-
It's not about the difference between 15
then
and 19, because the payment, you're right, it's going to be nothing.
Yeah, but just so you have the reference, though, like we did this, we talked about this last one. So if we did the 10 million, because last time we looked at 10 million and 20 million. 10 million will cost us $120,000. If we went to 20, where we are now, 460 million. So if you went 15 million, it's somewhere split the difference, right? So the difference between 120 and 463 is what, 3 something, 340? Now that might sound like a little bit of money when you're looking at it by itself, but now go lift up the budget sheet and talk about the 210K of program.
Yeah, but John, you can't compare those.
But see, that's where I have a problem.
Because there's no aid.
I understand that.
There's no aid in program costs.
No, I understand that, but the fact is, we have $1.3 million to work with. If we got a couple 100,000 more out of this bond because we spent less, that's an annual carrying savings, right? We're paying that now. It's in every year's budget. That is in the budget. So if you take $1 million off, and just like the 850K you're talking about, that's not going to disappear in one year.
You have to keep in mind, too, we're running a $1.7 million planned deficit. So it's not like that money comes in and it's above and beyond what we need. When that money drops off, it sets us equal.
So then we shouldn't call it savings, because that's what we're calling it.
It is a savings, but it's not, it doesn't become net revenue available to be used anywhere else that you want to use it in.
Well,
because that just sets us equal with revenues and expenses. And it's the aid, it's really the unique perspective right now is to have the unaided debt, to replace it with aided debt.
I get it, but I still see it as free money. I don't know how we separate it, because we still have a budget to manage year to year. We still have an outlook. We still have variables with the pilot coming out, with the electrical, with the electric power savings thing, proposal we're looking at. There's a lot of variables that are going to change, but that money is our money. Whether yes, we're still running a deficit, but if we had another 5 years on this debt, we'd still have that deficit. So it's money, it's found money, so to speak. I mean, it was planned, but, so I don't know how to separate it.
So another piece too, though, we've got 3 to 4 budgets until we see the impact of this project.
Correct.
So, you know, yes, you're right. There, you know, a position's $100,000 for a teacher. If there's a favorable aid package similar to what we did last year, where we got some better aid with the final budget, we were able to finance, you know, some nice pieces for safety and security in this year's budget. You know, we're mixing a little bit with, we haven't really debated the regular budget yet, but I would fully anticipate that we're going to see more revenue from a state aid package for our operating budget once there is a budget enacted, especially if you listen to Skoufis and Jacobson. But
I've done a lot of talking. I'll just end it like this. All I'm asking for is 3 to 4 months to really look at these things that we haven't had time to look at. And if we wind up in the same place where we are now, 3 to 4 months, you might say, well, what a waste of time. No, it's not a waste of time. That means we did the right due diligence. We can talk to our constituents out there to say, this is what we did, why we did it. We took the extra time. We took some risk on the schedule. We took 10 grand out of the budget, which we need for a vote. But we've done things like that before. We spent 20 grand on a phone system that's going away because we didn't want to risk a breakdown. We spent 3,500 on a lacrosse club when we wanted to do it all. We had that in the budget. So 10,000 on a $56 million budget isn't a real big hit. We can do that.
Well, I don't
it's the
think the
right thing.
concern is the cost of running the election. I think depending on when you do it, it will be seen as an opportunity to get around some voters, because you're not going to be voting at the normal election. But, it could go either way. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it could go that way now.
I guess
but-
the question is, do we want
I
to?
think we could debate the psychology of voting all day long,
So
because there certainly is
I
one.
guess the question is, do we want to try and the building administrators have been meeting with the architectural firm and going through all of that. Is having any special meetings between now and the April 4th going to make a difference? I guess I don't understand fully when you're talking about what the needs are. I think the people that are in the buildings every day have spent a considerable amount of time with the firm that we hired to bring a presentation to us. We can go whatever way the group wants to. They obviously had more things they wanted, and at the last meeting, we cut those down. If we want to have more of a workshop type meeting and bring all them together and rehash all of this, I'm fine with that if that's what the majority wants to do. When you're talking about understanding the needs, that's what I'm just trying to understand that portion as to where do we, when you talk about time, we can't spend every meeting over the course of the year just doing this. So if we want to do and really, if it's a concern that our administrators and the architectural firm and the administration haven't pulled together the true needs for us compared to wants, then, and we need to insert ourselves more to that day-to-day part from the professional staff, then we can do that. I just got to understand what we as a group want to do.
I'm just going to say one last thing is that, as all you guys here, I looked at all the plans that were presented, did the tours. My feeling is everything that I've seen in that $19+ million is really a necessity in our schools. That's my opinion. That's where I stand on it.
Well, I think that the track at the middle school is a priority over a lot of other things. I don't think spending $100,000 on a new area of pavement and striping is, and I certainly understand you can't compare $100,000 for a area of pavement and striping to that of the track, but we can debate things all along, but clearly the priorities of things that are very obvious, no matter what the reason is that we've included them or we haven't included them, there are certainly larger items too that have not been included. So, and the track is definitely one of them. I mean, you're talking, I'm going to focus on the middle school, not to disparage any work, Mr. Lawler, that you've done with your team, because I am all for the security and the safety of our students, and all of those vestibules, they need to get done. So if that happens, we are one step in a better direction than we were today. But what I'm going to say is, going into middle school, you are already in a very awkward life age, and these kids are going outside. They've got a track that's flooded. It turns into an ice skating rink. I mean, it's not my job to look at the details. We're here to vote on it. But if you want to talk about priorities, that's a priority. And we're voting on SECRA, and okay, so the DECs or whoever's got to get involved, this one, that, whatever. It's still a priority. So let's talk more about it.
My understanding with the track, because I don't disagree with you about the track and the tennis court area down there, but my understanding is that there's a much different process to that, and that there's also wetlands down there is something that
I'm sure there is, but you get well into this, and it's what, aside from, possibly coming into money or someone gifting, when is it going to be discussed? Honestly.
Oh, it absolutely should be discussed.
Let's be honest.
I don't know.
We're going to move forward with all of this, and then what?
Well, what does that do to the schedule if we talked about doing the track in the wetland area?
we have talked about that. But
Yeah, that'll require a more extensive environmental assessment process to go through. It is in a wetlands area. There's a lot of, obviously, stormwater issues. The whole field would likely have to be raised up significantly to correct the condition, and all that would have to be vetted, and, you know, it's a significant dollar value.
But in a process like this, is that something has to be done in the beginning of the process, or before you can plan something that's, if it's something that's 3 years out before you're actually getting to it?
If it's attached to this bond, it would have to be, you would have to complete the seeker and clear negative declaration or statement of findings prior to actually putting the bond vote up.
Okay, that's what I was, okay.
It doesn't,
and
Are we not
there's
voting on
no
that
doubt that
tonight
the
anyway?
Well, we don't know, we're gonna.
No. What I'm saying is, we have a secret part of the process
Not
vote.
that they
I
haven't
understand the
investigated. They haven't investigated. The declaration they gave us to do would not cover the work that would have to be done there. Because that requires different
Correct.
investigations.
The proposal that's presented to the board has been reviewed with the attorneys, been reviewed through our office and our civil engineers, and is determined to be a type 2 action.
But if we did the other, it would be
It would
more than
be,
likely.
it would be a type 1 action, and we would have to go through, you'd have to declare intent to be lead agent, we'd have to go through the process of informing involved in interested agencies, we'd have to vet that whole process and come up with an understanding of what the impacts were, how to mitigate them before issuing a statement of findings or negative declaration. Probably. It's nothing that can't be done.
There's no doubt that, well, there's a couple of pieces that are kind of floating out here. Number one, we do have a demographic study that was commissioned by the district in 2015 and produced in early 2016. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of this year, Pat and I talked about, you know, we're going to need to update that pretty soon. We want to keep on watching our trends. One of the reasons why we contracted with that early on was because we wanted to see if we're going to continue on with our lease agreement that we had at the time with Hudson Hills, or does our demographic projection look like we might need that space because our elementary school's tight. Our middle school and our high school have spaces because there's rooms that can be doubled up for instructional purposes, but the elementary really doesn't. That demographic study did not show that. It showed that we were fine as far as our long-term outlook. Now, a demographic study typically looks at a 10-year span, which this one did, but after about 5 years, that data gets a little grayer. So 1920 would probably be a good year for us to look at updating the demographic study to see if there's any change. Fortunately or unfortunately for a school district, when you do a demographic study, it doesn't get into any economics. It's purely birth rates, death rates, building permits, things like that. So it looks at population, growth, or not growth. It doesn't look at census data, for example.
But the school lunch does.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Next piece, there's absolutely part of the building condition survey, part of the just common knowledge, the track and tennis area at the middle school is in complete disrepair. Matter of fact, part of this project removes the broken concrete, pavement, or combination of the two of the tennis courts because it's not good. The paved area that we're looking at potentially in the back of the elementary school, the playground area, is also noted as should be addressed, must be addressed, but the pavement is beginning to fail. It's cracking. So it's, a trip hazard for kids, especially in the future. There's an absolute commitment administratively to continue having dialogue about what to do with the track. If we were to pass Vision 2020 in the time frame proposed, we don't stop because of that looking at our facilities. Come fall, let's look at the track area again, and there are alternative ways that we can look for funding. We can continue to seek out grant writing. It is an athletic physical education area. Maybe there are some grant opportunities there. Or perhaps that's something that you dip into the savings in the long run. Or you go back out to voters again in a couple of years for a vote for $1 million, or whatever the number would cost, depending upon the scope of what that project is. I'd prefer not to do the vote piece, because I think that this is, as Frank had said, something you go to the taxpayers about every decade for. So finding alternatives to approach that financing might be a wise idea. It's not lost on me that if we do delay, I respect it and will abide by it. It's the right thing that the board has decided at that point. It's not my recommendation, but I respect it. My concern is that if we do that delay, Tom just said to us, minimally of 5% to 10% escalation. 5% of a $19 million project is $1 million. It means $1 million either the project will grow by, or $1 million less we're going to do of work, of actual stuff done. So that is a concern that I have, because that's real money. That's just my editorial piece on this.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, as we go through the intricacies of the design, we have the ability within that dollar amount to tighten up what you're actually doing.
Correct.
Because we're voting on how much money we're going to borrow for a project. What the final design document looks like between the facilities committee and the building administration, and then when we approve it to go out to bid, is what it's going to look like.
Correct. That's that 6 to 7 month design process.
Right.
What we've been working on are general schematics. The real nitty-gritty design work of what it actually looks like takes the 6 or 7 months, so it's correct.
Hey, Tom, hey, isn't some of that baked in already? I see 10% estimating contingency, 10% construction contingency, and escalation 9%, which the third, I don't know what it is. But can you explain what that is, and how long does that cover us for things like price changes and so forth?
So we're at a conceptual level of planning for a project. So not having done full, rip apart the building and put it back together to understand every little last detail that we're going to encounter, we have an estimating contingency. We have to plan for that. What's being planned out, we don't know every single solitary detail of it. That's what the design process is for. So we have to plan that, and it's very appropriate to do that, because once we go out to the voters, that's all the funds you're going to have available. We have a escalation factor. So the escalation takes us to a midpoint of the perceived construction based on a schedule that we lay out, because escalation is a reality of life. Contractors are going to escalate their numbers. Unfortunately, we're seeing a little bit heavier escalation now because there's so much work in the marketplace, but escalation is going to continue. Used to be that we were 3% a year, then it's crept up to 5% a year. Now we're even seeing more than 5% a year.
So that represents escalation of costs,
escalation
not
of
schedule
cost.
or contingency. Okay.
Correct. So if, and the board can certainly delay this process, that's, it matters to me not. I mean, I think the board needs to be very comfortable. All of the board has to be very comfortable with what we're doing, why we're doing it.
So now we'll move to public comments on the agenda items. Please step to the podium, state your name, limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Joanne Reed, Newburgh. Okay. Number one is for many years, I've been going to board meetings and with building projects. Never has it ever done in a couple of months. See this room? There's nobody here. There's nobody here. Every project that has been done, the high school project took a year or more. The middle school took a year or more when it was fixed, and there was always community input. There's nobody here, because that kind of gives you an answer. My other thing is you took out the high school, the bathrooms at the high school in the building, in the capital project. They're disgusting at the high school. I don't know what's moving here, but, and that should really be relooked at. The heating system at the elementary school should also be put in here. That's not in here that you guys took out. Do we actually need the fitness center? Who's going to use it? Are there going to be cameras in it? The heating system? And how much is this actually going to cost the taxpayer? Not for anything, but Patrick just said, but the maybe Dynegy coming back. We were actually considered land rich at one point. That's why we had to lay off all those people. So if that goes, that means we as taxpayers are going to have that burden again with this project going up. And that means we're going to have to start laying off staff in order to pay for it. So we really need to think about what we're putting in these buildings, how much it's costing us, and where are we going with it. The middle school, I have to agree, definitely needs to be done. So rather, maybe we really do need to look at putting a brand new school up and getting rid of the middle school, or fixing it, putting it up, and fixing only the main entrances for security. But right now, there's like a million questions. And you guys, I can see what's going on. I mean, there's nobody here. I don't understand. Why is nobody's here? And like I said, Patrick keeps saying that it's not costing us anything. How much is it going to cost? How much is the budget going to cost us? You have hiring employees, even at the budget, that do we need it? We can add extra people for a gym period. So like I said, do you guys really need to think about the taxpayers here? And they're not even here because that's giving you your message. Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine Ciriello, Marlboro. I want to go on the record as saying I fully support this project. I went on the tours with the exception of the high school. And we need these things. We need them. I want to touch on something that John mentioned is what happens when it gets voted down. And I want to say, personally, I've been flooded with information about this. I come to the meetings, and it's not for lack of the district and the administration getting the word out. It's the people who don't pay attention. And I would suggest that there needs to be some kind of comprehensive plan by administration to somehow get the word out, because it's important. And I think what's going to happen is people are going to show up for the budget vote, and they're going to look at the 19 million or whatever it ends up being, and they're going to say, what? I don't know anything about this. I mean, I personally follow some of the social media pages. The moms don't know. They keep saying they don't know. It's on the district website. I get emails, I get connect ads, I get all this stuff, but people aren't looking at it. So I would like to say to you that if you want this passed, there's going to have to be some kind of widespread public information process. Otherwise, there's no way. And I think it needs to happen.
Thank you.
Good evening. You know, I was on the board before, and we continually talk about projects, et cetera. We talk about the demographics, and I don't think you could be afraid to have a project go down. If you think that this is needed or whatever, because we've had them go down before, and you'll get an idea of what the district or what the demographics, where they really feel on it. You also have to have good schools to draw a good demographic, right? I'm not saying that we have to have everything in the world, but you also have to have good schools, hopefully, to bring those people in, okay, that can pay for it. I have a few questions on it. And again, the same thing regarding the, I think about it all the time. You had said, as he was going through the presentation, I was like, how could you not, how could you not add the middle school fields and whatnot? I mean, that was part of what we wanted to do in the first place that we cut out or whatever. It could have been $1 million then to redo it. It's going to be $4 or $5 million now. You know, so those are all things you have to think about as well going into the future. I don't know, I'd like to ask Tom, I mean, we talked about, you know, raising it up or whatever. Can you just put in something to, I mean, we've talked about when we were down there, just clear the ditch out, let the water flow. I mean, it's all backed up. I mean, maybe just put some drainage in, it would help the field in the first place. You know, anything like that as opposed to maybe raising it, but something has to be done. So I support the project. Going forward, the time frame, again, I think you should do a vote in May. I think it's better off. I think people, you know, have that ability to have a good look at it. And you can't be afraid that if it goes down, it goes down. You'll have an idea of what's going on. in the community at that point. You sell it for what it is. But we have to continue to maintain, or we'll be back to where we were before, and who knows what the demographics could be at that point. All right? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
I do support this. I think it's a good thing. The middle school, like I said, definitely needs to be done. I think you guys are just rushing this. I think it will go through if, like Kathy said, you go out into the public more, like the other meetings that we've done in the past. They showed up at the library. We invited the community. I think you'll have a better chance, but I think you guys are just rushing this too quickly. But there are a lot of good points to it. But again, I think you guys just really need to sit and pick it apart and look at it and see what they're doing. So I do support it. Like I said, especially the middle school definitely needs to be done, and all the security entrances is definitely a plus. I think everything else needs to be looked at. Like I said, the heating system, the roofs. By the way, was the roofs put into this? And how long will the roofs last since we're doing the building projects? If you're doing a capital project, are the roofs all good in all the buildings? Are they good for 10 more years?
Joanne, it's comment section. We'll take it all in and we'll go from there. Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay. So more on consent agenda. Yeah, it's separate. Okay. The consent agenda. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves the contracts, agreements, and reports as presented. Personnel recommendations, donations for the backpack program, health and welfare for Valley Central and Arlington School District, CSE, CPSE recommendations, new textbook adoption, 2019-20 BOCES, UBOCES, bidding agreement, budget transfer, claims audit, report, financial reports for February, Board of Education meeting minutes for 3/7/19. Can I have a motion? James, second. Tony. Please vote.
So a question on the next two, can we do that? Or we have to bring them in? Just what they are, I'm a little confused.
What's that?
Like, what's the difference between the SECRA and the...
We haven't gotten there yet, John. We just did the first part. That's okay.
So I actually would like to welcome a brand new staff member that we just hired. So Ayanna Woodburn, she is our... This board took our recommendation early on and shifted a position that we had at the elementary school from a school psychologist and switched it to a school counselor. Similar roles, similar responsibilities, but there's more of an academic focus that a school counselor brings to an elementary school, which is also now part of the regulation, but we certainly saw the absolute need, so we began the search. And in that search process, we always know that the cream rises to the top, and Ayanna, it's a difficult process, an extensive process, and as a graduate of SUNY Buffalo, understanding what Western New York winters are, I'm certainly, hopefully, you're appreciative that we didn't have too bad of one down here, but we're now finally into spring, so you don't have to worry about that. But as a school counselor, K-12 certified, we welcome you to Marlboro Elementary School and a little piece of the high school. So, welcome to Marlboro.
Okay, so before we move into recommended actions, we'll go back to some discussions, because I don't know where we're at. So I'm just trying to figure out where we want to go. You know, we still have 2 weeks before that April deadline. We could do a special meeting, can't be Thursday, because several of us won't be available. But we could do a special meeting next week, and one the following week, earlier in the week, if we want to spend some time, if that's going to help the discussion. I don't want to have a meeting just to have a meeting.
If the intent is to have one more meeting to kind of go over this and come up with something, let's just vote now, right? I mean, one meeting's not going to change anything.
Okay.
And let's let the public decide. You know, that's kind of where I'm at. If we're just talking about moving, having a meeting in between this one and the next board meeting, that's not useful.
Yeah, I agree. If we're not going to give ourselves 3, 4, 5 months, whatever, I respect what Dean says and Mrs. Siriello. I do respect what you guys say, but this is just, so I'm at the point, to answer your question. Again, I support what we have to do something. It's about the speed and accuracy of what we're doing. I would like to make a motion to take these two things off the table. And after and continue to do these, if there have to be special meetings, whatever, focused on nailing down what we're doing, why we're doing it, making sure we can get the most out of it, tying it to the budget wherever we can. I know there's debates on whether we can be separate or not. That's my position. If the board doesn't vote that, then we take a vote. That's where I think we are. The 1 or 2 extra meetings is just going to spin us again.
I guess I'm just trying to understand what we're going to, other than talking about line items, what do you, when you're talking about discussions of what we should and shouldn't do?
I have a hard time not seeing any other budget presentation except a rollover budget with a 2-point-something% net increase of levy at the moment, with no data from the states as we're voting for a $20 million bond. Without comparing like some scenarios and worst case, best case scenarios, at least giving us some idea of how this ties together. That's my struggle, the biggest of all, I guess, of all of it. Whether you put a couple things in and out, I really would just like to listen to the people who made the priority calls and maybe listen to it. But that's where I am at. I think we're totally not paying attention to the budget at the same time, and I struggle with that. So 4 or 5 months would get us through the budget cycle and enough to focus on this. That's where I'm thinking. Maybe I'm wrong, but
No, Dean, sorry. No, please. Dean, please.
I'm comfortable where we're at.
Okay. James?
Yeah, I'm okay with doing the vote. I kind of made my stand clear on it, so I'm okay with it.
John?
I'm okay with voting tonight.
Susan?
Sure.
But
Are you making a motion? Okay, if you're making a motion, I'll second the motion. I guess I'm
That's
trying to figure out
Yeah,
what.
no,
I'd like to make a motion to take them off the table and give ourselves 4 or 5 months, whatever we think is appropriate, to do this a little bit with a little more due diligence. That's much more due diligence. That's my motion.
we have a second.
Second.
Okay. So then we'll take a vote. Russell?
No.
John?
Yes.
James?
No.
Tony?
Yes.
John?
No.
Susan?
Yes.
And myself, no. So we'll move to the secret vote. And I just, as we go through these, I think you're right, John, that we need to get with the public and really sit and have community meetings, because there's been a lot of advertisement, whether it's the district or the newspapers about this and the walkthroughs. Every paper they've published our walkthroughs and the discussions. I agree that it's the same people that are here year-round. It's not just because of this. This is the same people. Having been the people that sat through when people weren't happy, a lot of you were on that side, but we knew where the community felt because the community was here. But I think between now and whatever we're going to do, depending on how this vote goes, we will have to do those community meetings.
That was going to.
We can't do them, we can do them as a special meeting and do them, but to go out, the same, just like when we were doing the superintendent search, go out and explain why. If we approve it tonight, going out and explaining why. And the fine tuning of what we need to do, does it need to be this room, should it be that room? We've got, if it gets approved, we've got between now and when it gets approved to give them more direction on what we want them to do specifically within the confines of these dollars. If we need to tweak a change because, hey, we missed something, we have that ability to do that.
Well, we have the whole design process, correct?
Before
it goes
they
to
can't
approval.
start designing
Before
anything.
we can tweak things all the time.
They can't do a design, they can't even, we're not even gonna spend money to start a design until we have a budget vote approved. So between now and May, we can spend all the time we want, facilities committees, fine tuning, not this, we just can't go over that dollar amount. That's it. We have an approved dollar amount, so we still have time to make changes. And the reality of it is, when the numbers come back, if the numbers were over, we have to cut. If the numbers come in under, we save money. The board gets to, turn back and we don't have to borrow as much. And hey, maybe we'll get lucky and we'll even have more fund balance coming forward because, no, that's not the state seems to really be pushing to full fund our foundation aid over the next 3 years. We'll know more as the next couple of weeks progress, which would be more money that we can possibly put in the bank or do program. That'll be part of that regular budget process. So it's not like today we're done and we walk away. Yes?
Frank, just to be clear, when you present a vote to the public, you do have some discretion within the scope of what's presented to the voters, but what you're showing the voters and what they're voting on certainly has to be delivered within that scope. So
Yes. No, I'm saying.
You can't present to the voters, we have a chorus room we're going to build, and later decide you're not going to build it.
Right.
Because that, obviously the voters would have voted on it all previous. So you always set it up that you're going to have these minor adjustments, these adjustments during the design process, because that's what happens during the design process. But you're presenting somewhat of a scope of some work to the public.
Right. We can't change the whole program, but you can make tweaks to it within the confines of what we're talking about.
Can I just ask?
Just to give some perspective as far as public information, because administratively, we will not be promoting anything, we only provide information. We already have a full set of public information documents that we actually populated today on the Vision 2020 website. In addition, we have some promotional story videos that show that. Plus, I've already started meeting with PTAs. I've met with all 3 levels of PTAs prior to any of this with a commitment to go back to all of them. I literally will I'll go to anybody's kitchen if they want me to sit down and talk about the project. That's how much I believe in it. We will absolutely make ourselves available for evenings, days, afternoons, coffee with the superintendent to learn about it, cookies with the assistant superintendent because you want to figure out what it's all. Yes, yes, and yes. We absolutely will be committing to do that. So I want the board and the public to rest assured that your vote begins our work. I've been waiting to get to the point of a vote so that we can then turn that out because it's a lot of work. So we have the storyboards prepared. We haven't actually produced them yet, but they're ready to go. We've got the graphic all set. It's a matter of printing, pasting, and posting. So we're ready with whatever direction the board provides to us. So I want to make sure that there's absolutely that commitment from our team that that is what we will do for the next 2 months, from now to budget vote. Plus everything else you got to do. Plus everything. Absolutely. Absolutely. Most of the people in the room know that I was the opening principal of the brand new Cornwall High School. That is not a small process. I was the last principal of old Cornwall High School, first principal of new Cornwall High School. The construction of that, the vote, the failed vote, the successful vote, and then the construction is a process. It's not an event. The groundbreaking was an event and the ribbon cutting was an event, but my gosh, the thrown out suits because you tore them on a nail or you got your suit all muddy and you couldn't get the stain out. Yeah, 2 years. Yes, that's what we do. This is a full commitment, all in. We're going to get this right. when we put together a project. This is not a laissez-faire administration. I think you've learned that too. But we're all in on this. If this is the direction that the board and then ultimately the community puts out, we are all in on getting this right so that Marlboro schools continue to shine. That's what we do.
So, secret type 2, and we'll do a discussion once we have the motion in a second. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, adopt the secret type 2 action as presented. Can I get a motion? James, second. Russell. One of you want to explain secret type 2, what the determination means?
Yeah, and why there's two votes rather than together.
So SECRA is the Environmental Quality Review Act. It has to be cleared on every project, capital project, before you can advance a project to a referendum vote. There's different classifications for SECRA actions, and each of them have different thresholds. The typical ones for renovation projects and projects that don't exceed the normal thresholds is a type 2. That means the board can act on that as a negative declaration and then move to a vote of a referendum. If we had exceeded certain thresholds, we would be kicked into a type 1, and we have a longer process for environmental assessment that needs to be presented. In between type 1 and type 2 is an unlisted action. So we looked at all of the scope. We reviewed it with your council. We reviewed it also with our...
Council is Dan Pettigrew and Judy Maley.
Correct. Really. And based on everything that was presented, they made the determination that this was a type 2 proceeding.
Okay. So what if one passes and the other didn't? I mean, what's the effect of that?
Nothing, essentially.
Yeah, you can't do one without the other, right?
And the order is
In what
important.
we're
You have to pass the SECRA first before you can move to the next. So SECRA is a requirement to move to the next action.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other question on the secret determination? Okay. Please cast your vote. James, you vote?
Yeah, I voted. I'll give you a vote. Did you get it? You can cast mine as a yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approve the capital bond, project bond resolution as presented. This is the actual bond resolution that would result in the proposition being put on the ballot. Can I have a motion? John Merrill, second. James. Any further discussion? Okay. Please cast your votes.
Yes.
This was supposed to make it easier. I really think we're going to go back to a roll call.
Motion carried. 5 yes, 1 abstain, and 1 no.
As I had said, folks, I'm absolutely committed to this. You will be fully involved. We will completely, we're going to make this work. This is a good project. The community is going to benefit from it. Our children will benefit from it, and I will do my best to make you proud of the action just taken.
Okay. Old business. Russell, you had something?
I just wanted to commend Deb Clinton and the middle school drama club. They did a fantastic job with Shrek. And a couple board meetings ago, I had brought up the idea of maybe trying to move the middle school drama club production to the high school, but there's conflicts with scheduling, which I understand. And I was just wondering, the cost differences, if you're able to find any information, Mike, regarding what the middle school drama club has to rent versus what the high school drama club has to rent, and where the disparities lie for the middle school and not having the nice facilities to do their production in when they have such a wonderful drama club to.
Yes, I
Show
made some
off.
progress, but by the budget meeting on the 4th, I'll have a full report for the board so they understand outlays. There's outlays at both buildings because there's very special equipment that each play needs. So, but there's a difference. Yeah. The middle school just doesn't have the basic infrastructure that the high school has, so, yeah.
Yeah, because, the reason I'm asking is, at that point, I'd like to, address the board to consider helping out, on funds for both drama clubs where needed to make sure that we have the best possible outcome and experience for the students and the staff that run it.
Yeah, especially I think the middle school issue is because we're so far behind on doing things, they don't have those basics that everybody else does. And next year, can't be St. Patrick's Weekend. I think it hurt them horribly on attendance. It was a beautiful show. Just wish there were more people.
Yeah, we'll, not to advertise more, but Vision 2020 has a substantial upgrade to the gymnasium, the visual and the audio, the sound system, so we'll pull all that together, but we'll have that information for you for the next.
No, I'd appreciate that.
Yep.
Deb?
I just want to say it's not going to be St. Patrick's Day weekend. We already have a sense of what it's going to be and when it's going to be.
Great.
So we get to know.
Well, I'm going to send a note of thanks directly to the two directors who stepped up this year, and that was, if you remember, why it's late is because they didn't, we couldn't find them. And I thanked them personally that day, but I'm going to put it in writing because they did an amazing job with a short period of time they had, and there was a lot of doubt about them, including some of the students, and they pulled it off. So amazing what they did, and hopefully we can try to get some more maybe teachers or other school employees to support them. I mean, they really were alone. And not that people didn't help them, but I think when in the course of their productions, if you have teachers helping, there's a level of discipline and there's a level of follow-up in the school day that happens that they can't do, and they're a little disadvantaged. But they really pulled it off. I commend them very much. So I've watched the whole program for 3 years, and it was right up there with the other ones.
Yeah, I second John on that. I thought that Dean and Amy, I think their names are, they did a phenomenal job doing it. I know my daughter's in drama club, and this is her first year, and she was just so ecstatic about her experience in it. And the last day when they had their goodbye party, she was crying and saying goodbye. She made great friends with the 7th and 8th graders. And just from my experience watching my daughter go through it, it's a phenomenal program.
Yeah,
And we should do everything we can to keep supporting the arts.
You're in for a heartbreak. Wait till she's a senior and they're doing that whole thing with the seniors the last day. It's no fun.
I'm still on the week crash. Were you kidding? In my house? Forget it.
Any other old business? Any new business?
Thought you're on other items?
Sorry. Any other items?
Just one thing. I wanted just one last statement. I've been pretty critical of the time frame here because of the reasons that I mentioned, but I want to make sure there is no misconception that that's a criticism of all of you who also are in a crunch for time to get us this far. The administration, the principals, and Larry, I'm sure, and Pat, and everybody that I forgot to name. Because you had to do all this at the same time as your regular jobs. I recognize that. I don't want that to go unnoticed or make it seem like it's unnoticed and it was being critical of you. I don't, for one moment, think anybody was rushing for the sake of anything other than trying to get to the point where we could even have this discussion. So I just want to say thank you for doing that. I don't agree with the pace for other reasons, but that doesn't mean it takes away from what you've done. So I just want to make sure you understand that. I'm not going away with a critical view of you or anything like that, and I just want to be sure that's clear. So thank you.
I would like to second that. I think that I don't think that there's one person here on this board that doesn't want to see our district continue to improve and improve. And I honestly believe that every board member here always does the work that's involved in getting to that point. And I think all of our discussion has been very healthy. I just feel that we have the job that always has to weigh out both. And it's very easy for us to see when we are, you know, within the confines of the district to see the district's needs. And when we don't have people showing up and we're not really understanding, you know, what position someone is taking, and of course we will at the vote. But in the meantime, I am too appreciative of all of this, and I certainly do support making our facilities much better for those that are here and hopefully for those that are to come. And hopefully that will be a great influx.
From your lips to God's ears, hopefully. Good influx. Any other items? Okay. Recognition of district residents and others?
Joanne Reed, Newburgh. So I have a question at the next board meeting. You'll be doing the budget and the capital project together, so the taxpayers can understand what it's going to cost them?
We'll
And
have-
if the budget goes down, will you have a presentation for that also?
Well, yeah, as part of the normal budget process, it'll be the same as it is every year.
Right.
But we're all hoping that the state budget will be in place and the aid numbers will be out, so we'll actually be able to have a good conversation about the budget. That's the plan. And we always look at the whole budget.
Well, it's just
two
that
more
this way we
meetings
can break it, go ahead, sorry.
There's 2 more meetings for budget.
All right, just to make sure you break it down for the taxpayers so they can understand how much it's going to impact them on both projects, the project and the budget. My other thing is, now that you voted to go forward with the building project, so that's telling me that you're not going to fix the bathrooms at the high school, because you took that out. Is that correct? And you're not going to be doing the heating system at Marbell Elementary?
Nobody said the building condition survey is addressing, whether it's through the capital project or through our ongoing maintenance, all the issues at the elementary school. The bathrooms at the high school function and are working, and at this time aren't part of the renovation plan.
Well, I have to tell you, the bathrooms at the high school are disgusting. The faucets didn't work, the bathrooms didn't work. I mean, they really need to be re-looked at, and that should have been done during this process. And I've complained about it in the past, even when I sat on that board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Motion to adjourn. We have no executive session tonight. Tony, second. Susan, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?